Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Charlie Bengel Jr. with Remax Allegiance, and welcome to another edition of the Allegiance Way Show and the Daily Dose. My co-host today is Coach Amy Lassen. Amy, good to see you.
Hello, good to see you.
Thank you. First, some market news.
Nice.
Friends down at Hampton Roads.
Paper.
Friends in Hampton, yeah, I feel like I'm reading a script. Friends in Hampton Roads, so be thinking Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Norfolk, etc. In the last week, 730 new listings.
Wow.
690 new pended. Seems like a brisk market now, doesn't it? 535 sold. And some shout outs. Yeti got a new listing. Barb, her new $1.6 million listing, now on the market. Denise had 2 closings in the last week. And Ressi had a great appraisal come in. So good things are happening for those who are in.
Yeah,
that's group coaching people. Those are my group coaching people. So I get to hear wins from them every week, which is great. And it just goes to show that those agents that are out there working and wanting to make things happen are making things happen. And those, frankly, that want this to be, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, what an amazing excuse COVID is for people who don't reach their goals this year. They'll look back in December and go, oh, God, that COVID thing, business was terrible, but it was COVID. But yet there's going to be some people that have record years this year.
Yes.
Due to COVID.
Yes.
How ironic. So it's all about the mindset, right?
People
really.
I have in coaching who are not doing well weren't doing well before.
Yes, agreed.
And people who are kicking butt
Yep.
were before.
Yep.
Really,
I have a coaching client who set this really big goal of getting 20 accepted offers in 30 days. And she got 18.
Wow.
In Wisconsin, right? Partial shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she has a tiny team, but it's like she's the rainmaker. She did all this work.
Yeah.
18 to 20. I mean, that's extraordinary. I mean, to be tracking, like that. She's tracking for what, 220 units? I mean, that's something, right? And I think our goal's closer to half that. So day 2 of listing process.
Yes.
I believe that we're going to have 3 days of this. So I adjusted the calendar. FYI, we're going to be doing listing process again tomorrow. So let me share my screen and pull up where we are and where we left off yesterday.
So for all those tuning in new, we're walking you through the entire listing process, soup to nuts.
I don't think this is really what I wanted.
Seller. A champion lister. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to read what you had.
Let me try this again.
Because everybody says it, those that list last, right? Oh my goodness, Charlie, I heard one. Agents don't retire, they just become listless.
Oh, I've heard that too. Maybe that was the right document. I have so many. I wish you all could see what happens behind the scenes when you're trying to share your screen.
I think you had scrolled down. I think that's what it was. So scroll back up maybe in that one.
Yeah, I have more than one
version.
Yes, I think I do. Hold on. Okay, so we left off yesterday right before going on the actual listing presentation. So we left off right here, Amy. Okay. Prepare listing, contract, and all disclosures. Mm-hmm. And I was originally thinking about just skipping that, but then I thought, we shouldn't skip that, right? So we should go to the listing with the mindset that the sellers are going to sign this listing agreement today, right?
Right. I think we've all, those of us who have been in business longer than a year, have had the experience of showing up, assuming this was just a preview or whatever, and they're like, didn't you bring anything for me to sign? And you're like, what did I do? Charlie, I want to back up one step. This checklist is not hyper granular like a training document, because this is meant to actually walk you through your transaction flow. But in a training document, we would also say, schedule the listing appointment, send a reminder about the listing appointment, make sure all on title, all decision makers will be present. And a lot of those things can be guided when you use the seller. I'm trying to think of what we're calling it, Charlie. The seller interview form. You called it something different yesterday.
But yes, it has a much grander name as the form. But yes,
Yes. So when you're interviewing the seller, that's one of the many questions. And they're like, oh, so-and-so won't be here, they're at work, but that's okay, right? No, right? You need all the decision makers present. Okay, keep going.
Something else mindset wise, I was talking to a coaching client earlier today about, listings and having the mindset of getting, the listing. And I was telling him about, a client in California who regardless of when they think they're going to actually put the house on the market, he brings the lockbox to the listing and he puts it on the kitchen table. It just sets the tone, right?
Yeah.
In other words, I'm getting this. And the pre-listing questionnaire does say, please have a set of keys ready, right? So that is something that is discussed, but I think, bringing that lockbox with you, it just gets you in the right mindset for the discussion that you're going to be having with the client. So let's move down here.
So did you want to jump into what is included in the actual presentation? Or okay.
Yeah. So doing the actual presentation, let's start with, ding dong, right? They answer the door and kind of what happens next. If you want to go, and then I'm happy to add my thoughts.
Okay, cool. So I want to clarify for those who may or may not have missed yesterday, we sent a very long pre-listing document to the seller in advance. It was kind of the about me, right? It's about me, about my company, about my brand, my successes. Here's my testimonials, maybe some big picture stats, maybe some big picture marketing. I like to do stats and marketing in person. So that's already gone out. Let's clarify that. And you're not going to have to make this appointment all about you.
Right.
I'm amazing. You're going to make it about them. So yes. And it's funny, and maybe we should talk about sharing it. I have a training document that is 5 pages, single space, and it's like, knock on the door, step back, read everyone, including the pets.
Be on time.
Be on time, be early if you have to, and just sit there. That's fine.
Right.
One of my tips, pro tip, and you guys have to decide if you're doing in-person listing presentations or if these are virtual, but one of my pro tips is when you show up early, stand out front and make a real quick coming soon. And Charlie, you can push back on me because I know coming soon is not allowed in your area. But if I do a coming soon video on my phone and just say, hey, everybody, this incredible house is going to be coming on the market soon. And if you're interested in a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, whatever, call me and I'll tell you all about it. You don't give the address, you're not doing anything.
Right.
So could you get away with that?
That's a very interesting question. Since you're not giving away the address, I think you probably can.
Yeah.
But you can certainly publicize it within your brokerage. They've clarified that, right? You can publicize coming soon within your brokerage, and if you have multiple offices in your brokerage, like Allegiance does, you can publicize it within the entire brokerage, not just your office.
Okay.
So the video, I think, is, well, it's twofold. One, it's promoting it, and then two, it's just another example of what you're showing the sellers, what you're going to do, right? First of all, I'm a video person, right? And this is an example of something similar to what I will do, once you sign the listing. So, it's more of these assumptive closes, right?
Absolutely. So my intention would be you come to the end of whichever part of the presentation and you say, I'd like to show you this video I did and ask if I can post it to all my social media channels tonight.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my goodness.
Yep. I like it.
So actually, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, the first thing is to build rapport. Right. And the tour of the home, when you first get there, you want to sit yourself down and say, hey, can you show me around? And the tour is important, but building rapport and picking out things that you see within the house that you can relate to is so important. If you see a Florida State University poster in the kid's bedroom, it's, hey, I'm an FSU grad, right? Does your son want to go to FSU? Did one of you guys go to FSU, right? Anything, a soccer trophy, some certificate from the Navy, and maybe you served in the Navy, right? Whatever it is, whatever you can grab onto to build that rapport, I think is super, super valuable. So it's not just the tour of the house and, you need to have your carpets cleaned before we list, right? You're trying to look at everything, especially on the walls, to give you cues as to what you can discuss to try to get them to let their guard down if it happens to be up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Charlie. So I have a process. I take copious notes. I've had agents tease that they pretend to take notes because they don't think notes are important. I take real notes. I take copious notes.
Yeah.
I measure the property as I go. It takes me seconds more. I'm not dragging down the tour. I'm not slowing up the seller.
Okay.
I'm using my laser measurer and I'm just jotting it down. That's another assumptive close. By the time we've walked through and they've showed me their home improvements, the thing is already measured and I've got everything written down. And that's those little things that you may forget too. When you go to put it in the MLS, you're like, wait, is that hardwood? Or, you know, I write everything down. And then I do ask those types of questions like you say, Charlie, and I hold back. This is my personal experience and technique on giving negative feedback. I give the positive feedback. I've had people say before, if so-and-so doesn't believe in my house, I don't want them listing it, right? So I do everything possible to appreciate what they have and to ask questions like, did you choose that? Was that your idea? I love this. And I'm never insincere. I find things that I genuinely love. And then when there are rough questions like, do we need to get rid of this? Will this have to be changed? Quite frankly, I stall and I say, we'll talk about that. I have a professional that I bring in on every single home to give us a big picture vision of the things that will be the biggest bang for the buck to change. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And that's my stall, but I do it. I use a professional stager. I've had it backfire on me when I've given what I thought was even gentle feedback and they got really upset.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that that's great advice and it's the same advice that I would give. And do you charge them for that staging consultation or is that just part of your concierge service?
Well, as a coach and trainer, I always say to agents, you know, everybody does it a little bit differently. I'm happy to tell you exactly how I do it. Know that there are so many different iterations of this and staging means different things to different people. So what I always include is a 2-hour staging consultation. So I'm paying for her time. What I don't necessarily include is anything above and beyond that, more and more hours of her time or actual rental of furniture and art and things like that.
Got it.
But I have had really big listing projects where we kind of went into it collaboratively, me and the seller, and split the tab on both. I've paid for a lot more hours and then had them pay for all the furniture rental. I've done it a few different ways.
Yeah, and if you're in the DC metro area and it's a $2 million listing, you may have a little bit of room in that budget to help them do the staging, right? So no, I love the idea of bringing in that stager to give them the bad news, to tell them that, their house smells like cat pee and we need to do something about that, right? Because I agree that there's some people that get really offended. If they live there for a long time, that house is one of their babies. And if you go in there criticizing it, then you may never hear from them again. So I think that's great advice. Talk to me more about the actual listing presentation. So we've done the tour. Now we're, sitting at the kitchen table. What's next?
Okay, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here so I don't forget anything. I think it's really important to reestablish motivation and perhaps rapport. Hopefully you've been rapport building throughout the tour, but if you have not established motivation yet, you definitely need to, or reestablish motivation. Like we talked about, Mr. Seller, on the phone, you said that it's absolutely vital that you be in Austin by August. Tell me more about that. Whatever it takes to really get engaged and make it about them, and then step in. But given that we have hopefully done a really good job of sending a lot of things in advance, I think you can spend a little bit more time making it all about them. What concerns do you have about listing at this time? Why is now the perfect time for you to list your home? Whatever it is, what expectations do you have? What concerns do you have? Just keep letting them talk. People say the most brilliant conversationalist is the one who hardly ever says a thing, right? Oh, I love so-and-so. She's so great to talk to. So be that person. You will learn a lot, and you can't be the answer to someone's prayers until you know what they're praying for anyway. So I would spend quite a bit of time on that. I itemized, and we can give away this outline. The types of things that I probably would have already sent in advance instead of doing in person is why choose me, my team, my company, company stats, professional stats, testimonials, market stats. I do big picture market stats. I don't send the CMA. I don't send the comps, and then the assumptive close, and all of that would have gone out. But now that we're in person, I would walk them through the stats again, and I like to do list to sell ratio, average days of market, things like that. I would also look at the sold comps in their area, and this may or may not be an important thing where you guys are, but did the sold properties give up closing costs? People across the street got, I had this happen yesterday. And they're certain that they're going to get this number. And I said, well, that included $5,000 in closing costs. And they looked confused by what that meant. So be prepared to share that. And then I go through my marketing plan with marketing samples. Trying to make sure I don't do this out of order. I actually walk them step by step through the selling process.
Okay.
No surprises later. Charlie, I've shared the story with you about my client who was so mad that she sat in her car with her cat for a whole hour during a home inspection. And I thought, an hour? They were out of there in an hour? I couldn't believe it was that fast.
Yeah.
She was angry that it took so long. Totally my bad that I didn't tell her it's easily 3 hours and you definitely need to get lost.
Right.
So right now, I do a much better job of walking them step by step through how is it going to work with electronic contracts. Should we look at maybe a pre-inspection? Are there any improvements that they might want to do to their home? Like sometimes getting top dollar means it really is worth waiting the time it takes to totally repaint them in level or whatever.
Right.
Staging, inclusions, exclusions, just really, really make sure that every little thing is detailed. I also talk about negotiating strategies and what's happening with showings, and then COVID, of course. We need to go into a lot of detail about hands-free processes and what are the requirements that we'll have. I saw in the MLS yesterday an agent said that no showings will be set until a pre-qualification letter is emailed. You can have all those conversations with the seller. Yeah. So there's a lot
Okay, so we built rapport. Yeah. You've gone through that. We're assuming that they got the book, they read the book, right? If they didn't, you got to spend a little bit more time on that stuff, right? If they've not read about you and your company, you need to spend some time there. So let's say we're cool there. Then are you pivoting? You said you went over some stats. How deep do you go with the CMA? We prepared the CMA when we talked about it yesterday. You get out the highlighter, the circling. I absolutely circle, that seller contribution number because I do agree with you that it makes a big difference, right? So that is part of, the days on market, when it actually sold, all that stuff, and I just print them and I circle and I highlight similar to what you do. Yeah. It's not really fancy. Right. But it gets their attention as you're circling or highlighting or pointing. Yeah. So let's go a little bit deeper on the actual pricing of the home, if you will, and that discussion. Where do you want to start?
I'm taking a breath because it's possible that I didn't get the listing I went on yesterday.
Okay.
These are people in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
They asked me to come over. The woman knocked on my door and she stood very close to me without a mask.
Yeah.
So I can tell right now she's not respecting the distancing.
Yep.
So I went, because she's right across the street, I went over to her house and I told her I will be here at the time we agreed, 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay.
I will be wearing I was standing way far away. I said, I will be wearing a mask and gloves because that's required by the real estate commission. And in my state, this is true. Yeah. So I said, I don't want you to be uncomfortable. This is required for me to enter your home. I want you to understand that. And I said, and I have sent you a link to a Zoom meeting and we can go through in detail the solds around here. We've had quite an interesting range, and I told her what the ranges were, and she was like, great, 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 love it, love it, love it. So I go over there, and then her husband's like, well, we're not sure, it's a month out, we don't need to go through the comps. So the problem is I didn't complete my service. I didn't do what I know how to do. He sort of cut me short and said, we've interviewed 3 agents and they're all about the same and we're not sure how we're going to choose. And I thought, well, ding dang it, I didn't bring my A game. Part of my A game was in that presentation I was going to do on Zoom. So lesson learned for me, I need to package all this up and email it.
Okay.
Everything that I hope needs to get delivered. And don't ever let the client say, we don't care, we're not worried about it, don't bother, which is what he said. Because now he's underwhelmed and he doesn't know why. So anyway, that was my little take a deep breath.
So how will they choose them? So he said, I don't know how we're going to choose. Okay, interesting. Tell me more about that. So are you going to flip a coin or draw a name out of the hat? I mean,
I know.
How weird. Okay.
It was odd. But my point is, I know how I can do better in the future. So to your question about how deep do we go deep, baby. And you get yourself in a position to where the client's like, no, thanks, I don't care.
Right.
That's a weak position to be in. So whether you have to package it up carefully and send it in a video or in some sort of a PDF or a flip book, whatever it takes in these times of social distancing to make sure that all the information gets in front of them.
Got it. Yeah. So pricing. Yeah. Right. One of the pre-listing questions is, what do you think your house is worth? What do you want to ask for your house? Something similar to that, right? And so we should all have an idea of what they want before we get there, either virtually or in person.
Sure.
And I want to reiterate again for day 2 here, the importance of those pre-listing dialogue questions. They're on the allegianceway.com under Get More Sellers. You just have to do that. Otherwise you get caught flat-footed, right? So, I was telling a client earlier today, if you ask those questions, you almost know what the objections are going to be before you get there, because they've already objected on price. If the house is worth 400 and they want 450, you already know you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And you could almost handle that objection throughout the presentation before they actually present it as an objection.
Yep.
Right. So talk to me more about pricing. Let's assume that they don't agree with your pricing. Yep. Let's assume that, you've shown them everything and there's still a delta. Let's use the example that I was using a minute ago. It's worth 400. They want 450.
Yep.
Right. And I was telling you that story yesterday about when we were at Summit a couple years ago, and that coach was talking and I was only half paying attention. And then it was just like, it just dawned on me, the pricing conversation. And I think you and I agree on this, but I'm not certain. So talk to me about, if there's a delta, what's next?
Well, I want to take one step back and make sure, because we didn't tell you guys how to do a CMA, but there's a couple of things. You do show them the 3 to 5 most similar properties. Right. Go through and you circle and everything. Make sure they've really seen it. And this is what I didn't get to do. They think their house is so special and we didn't look at the photos of all the other houses. So that's a problem. Okay. But the other thing is, when it comes to pricing, they need to understand the landscape. And that when we can look at list to sell ratio and days on market, this can be invaluable. When I can say we're looking at 101.34% of asking at the time of contract on average for X target property in 8 days. And that one that you're talking about, actually the price was reduced 3 times and it sat for 58 days. Like, to know those things, to be able to have that conversation and say, in our market, what we're finding is buyers are generous, buyers are excited when you're in the sweet spot.
Yep.
When you're trying to bleed the market for every penny, you usually have to get down closer to the sweet spot, and that's where those multiple offers come in. Okay. So actually, Charlie, there is a slide that most agents have seen, and I'm trying to think if you and I could find it, where it shows you get your most looks in a certain amount of time.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. It looks like a wave almost.
Yeah, you're going to get the most enthusiastic engagement in offers. And in my market, it's multiple offers above asking when you're in the sweet spot. When you're begging the buyer to trust you, not so much. So all those things I want to show them, so that they have a sense of why don't we just try it? Why don't we just go 50 over? Maybe a bad idea. If at the end of the day, and you and I have talked about this, if they refuse to back down and they just really, really want to try it, I think we have options. And say the line. Say the line that you heard that made your head snap.
I don't know if I remember it. Well, it was never lose a listing on price again.
Right. That was the line.
That was the line, absolutely. And it's not our house.
Yeah.
She also said that it's not our house. It's not our decision.
Right.
So I take it a step further. If you want to do it your way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right. But we're going to build in price reductions into this listing agreement. So if your way doesn't work, we're going to get this discussion out of the way right now about these price reductions. And I think that if they object to that, then you need to decide if you want the listing or not.
100%. So I think there's 3 super important things to keep in mind with taking an overpriced listing. One is, are you wasting your time and money?
Yep.
Don't do that.
Right.
Do that. 2, are you misleading the seller? Or did you make it extremely clear that this is at your behest, that this is being listed too high, and that they know it and it's written in? I have let clients overpriced properties, but they knew what we were doing and that I disagreed. The other thing is, I think I already forgot. I had it all tidy in my head. But you've got to make sure that, don't ever buy a listing by making up a number. Don't. And
we know that there's agents all across the country that, they get listings only because they say that the seller's going to get more than every other agent said.
Yeah.
And then they chop them down, they beat them up to get the reductions to actually get the sale. And we all know that when you get a listing, there's a big high, right? the endorphins, everything feels great. Well, you know what? None of it matters until it sells, right? We are volunteers that are actually spending our own money and time, until it sells. So it's good to go home and tell the significant other, hey, I got a listing today. And you know what I honestly wish they would all say? Is it going to sell? Seriously, right? Not to beat you up, but if you're taking overpriced listings all day, you're not building in price reductions into the listing agreement, and then they end up expiring, and we all know what happens when they expire. What happens? It goes to the next agent, and what do? They take the original price that you suggested. Right at the beginning. This happens all the time. So building in the price reductions after a certain amount of time. After a certain number of showings. I have a client in New Jersey who he builds it around a certain number of showings. I've not asked him how this is working with COVID, right? Because things are a little bit weird. But he had clients coming to him. Hey, Jay, it's Monday. We only had X number of showings over the weekend. Don't we need to lower our price? I mean, what a great problem to have, right? Clients calling you saying, I know we need to lower the price. So if they're not willing to build those price reductions into the listing agreement, I think you need to have another discussion about their motivation.
Correct.
Right. The motivation to getting to Austin in 2 months, that's false unless they're willing to carry 2 homes.
Yep. And I think you made such a good point about really having a system and telling them, great, this is how we're going to do it. And if they can't get on board, there's your sign. But that reminded me of what my third point was. If you haven't educated the seller well enough, that's on you. And most of us could do better. So please don't be defensive. Really, really think about how can you be more persuasive when you show them list to sell ratio, days on market, how many have frequent price reductions, how many were in the sweet spot. Get good at explaining value. Don't just say, well, I think your house is worth less, and then blame the seller when they don't trust you and they want to try a higher price. So yes, we take overpriced listings when it's very clearly explained what's going on and the seller agrees to price reductions. No, we don't take overpriced listings when it's going to be a hemorrhage of our time and money, and don't ever do either until you've done as thorough a job as possible of persuading them of the truth.
Exactly. And speaking, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was thinking a great question to ask is, so, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, how honest do you want me to be with you? On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning I will lie to your face throughout this whole process, and 10 meaning I will be brutally honest throughout this transaction. What's the number? You know what, Charlie? It's a 9. You write that down, because when something goes wrong later, you call them and you say, hey, remember when you told me that you were a 9? You're preparing them for news that they don't want to hear.
Sure.
Right? And you just pause, and they're going to go, uh-oh, what's wrong? Right? And then you're honest with them, right? I mean, it's our job to, get them to their goal, right? And we all know that there's so many agents that just don't do it the right way. They'll say whatever it takes to get a listing, whatever it takes to get a commission. And I don't think that that's the way. I know it's not the way that you and I run our businesses, and it's not the way that the people that are watching this show right now would run theirs either. But that question is a really good question, right? And it's very unlikely that someone's going to say a 3. I'm a 3. They're not going to say that, right? So remembering that number, and I stole that from another agent whose name is escaping me at the moment, out of Columbia, Missouri, who came and spoke to us. That is part of his listing dialogue, asking that question, and I just think that it's a really good one. What else during the actual presentation? Now it's commission time.
Yep.
We're almost out of time. Do you want to do a nugget on commission today, or do you want to punt that until tomorrow? I'll leave it up to you.
Ooh, great question. I don't know. I'll tell you, always do a net sheet, and I have agent push back on me. Why would I do that? Why would I show them what it's going to cost? Because you have to. But the net sheet is the last thing. If we're handling commission objection in the moment when we're going through the cost, it's a little late. It's hard to handle commission objection when they are not convinced that your service is valuable. Now, every once in a while, you're going to get somebody who just has to have a win, and they love to negotiate. And I do have a script when people ask me, would you do it for less? And I smile and I say, no. but thanks for asking.
Mhm.
You know? And you can do it more than that. You can say, you know, good for you for asking,
Yeah.
or, but I just no, and in the as few words as possible. The problem is if I haven't done a really good job of persuading them
Yep.
that the property improvements and the staging consultation and the above and beyond video tour
Yep.
is going to make the difference, it's kind of hard. We've all heard the objection handlers, and maybe we should do that tomorrow and share, you know, you cut a dollar bill in 6 pieces. I don't know, all the
You
silly.
start taking the marketing pieces off the table, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, are we going to take the video off the table because that cost me $1,000, right? So let's do that tomorrow. But I think ending today with what you just said, know and smile, that's like the old David Knox way. And oh, is there anybody better at teaching like the pure sales techniques than David Knox? Oh man. And if you all don't know who I'm talking about, Google David Knox right now, right?
Yep.
He's still around. He's still putting out videos.
Yep.
He is so good at that. And then you pause. And if you got to bite your tongue, you bite your tongue because you're not the one that speaks next.
Yep.
Right? You just wait.
Yep.
And then see who caves, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. You want to talk, right? You want to fill that gap, that uncomfortable gap. I think that's where we leave it, right? Not an uncomfortable gap. There's going to be a gap for the next 23 and a half hours until our next show. And we will continue this conversation and wrap up the listing process tomorrow.
All right. Well, keep in mind, everybody, the best way to win is to make your listing presentation a conversation. If you have brought them along with you, when you come to the commission part, it's going to be way more possible to handle any objections in that moment, rather than being a bullhorn,
Yep.
you know, and not reading their faces. So make it a conversation, and we will pick it up
And
tomorrow.
it's about the net. It's not about the fee. We'll leave it at that. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.